Welcome to another deep dive. We're going deep today.
Mhm.
We've got some fascinating ancient texts you guys sent in. Excerpts from Tobit and Sarah. Prayers in distress.
Yeah.
Think of this as your shortcut
Exactly.
to understanding these ancient prayers. Really powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Deeply human expressions of suffering and hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're going to try to do is unpack what these prayers reveal about the nature of distress itself. You know, the act of praying when you're in these moments of suffering. And of course, the glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
Because even in the midst of suffering, there's always some hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have here two individual prayers
Yeah.
offered in very different circumstances,
Right.
but offered up by Tobit and Sarah.
Okay.
And so our goal is to really delve into the heart of their anguish,
Yeah.
how they communicate that to God,
Yeah.
and ultimately what we can learn from their experiences.
Okay. So let's start by looking at Tobit's
Mhm.
situation.
Right.
The text tells us that he was sad at heart, overcome with groaning and weeping, even before he says a word of prayer.
Yes.
Like you can feel it.
Abs-
The depth of his despair.
Right.
What's your initial reaction to that? Like this raw outpouring of emotion even before the prayer begins.
Well, I think it immediately sets the stage for a very honest and vulnerable prayer. There's no pretense here. He's not approaching the divine from a position of strength.
Right.
He's coming at it from a place of utter brokenness.
Yeah.
And what follows is fascinating. He begins by acknowledging God's righteousness,
Mm-hmm.
his justice, God's mercy and fidelity. Why do you think he starts there? In such a state of distress?
That's a good question. I mean, it almost feels like he's reminding himself
Yeah.
and perhaps reminding God as well
Yeah.
of like the fundamental nature of the divine,
Right.
even as he's about to express his own very personal and very real pain. It's
Exactly.
like a grounding principle.
Yeah, it's a way of sort of setting the stage.
Yeah. And then he transitions into his plea,
Yes.
asking not to be punished for his own sins or unintentional mistakes or even the wrongdoings of his ancestors.
Right.
There's this weight of history that he's carrying.
Exactly. I mean, he's living within a tradition where communal and ancestral responsibility were significant.
Right.
He recognizes that their current suffering, the plunder, the captivity, the being made into, an object lesson, a byword, and a reproach, all of these things are not happening in a vacuum. He connects it to a larger narrative of disobedience.
Yeah.
So what does that tell us about how they understood their place in the world
Yeah.
and their relationship to the divine?
It suggests this huge sense of accountability,
Yes.
like both personal and collective.
Exactly.
And there's this stark acceptance of God's judgment. He actually says, yes, your many judgments are right in dealing with me as my sins and those of my ancestors deserve.
Wow.
Yeah. So heavy. Like, talk about acceptance.
Yeah. It speaks to a belief in divine justice, even when that justice brings hardship.
Yeah.
But what's so powerful is that even within this acceptance, there's this intense cry for release.
Yeah.
He actually longs for death. He says, "It is better for me to die than to live, because I have listened to undeserved reproaches, and great is the grief within me." That word reproaches. While the text doesn't tell us exactly what they were, what kind of social stigma or accusations might he have been facing that would lead to such despair?
That is a crucial point.
Yeah.
It could have been anything from like public ridicule to accusations related to his community's misfortunes.
Right.
In a society that's so tightly knit, those kind of reproaches could be unbelievably damaging to one's sense of self,
Absolutely. Yeah.
belonging, all of those things.
Right.
And he goes on to repeat his desire. He says, "For it is better for me to die than to endure so much misery in life and to listen to such reproaches." It's a powerful expression of just wanting his suffering to end, even if that means death.
Yeah. It's almost like he sees death as a refuge
Yeah.
from the pain of these reproaches. What resonates so strongly is the raw vulnerability. He's not trying to be pious or stoic. He's laying bare his utter despair. It makes his prayer feel incredibly human, even across millennia.
Okay, so we have Tobit.
Right.
In his distress. Now the narrative shifts to Sarah, and it's striking that this happens on that very day. The text is very specific about this, but in a completely different location in Ecbatana. So this simultaneous timing feels significant.
Absolutely. It creates an immediate parallel between their experiences. And while Tobit's suffering seems tied to broader societal issues and personal grief, Sarah's distress stems from a very specific and traumatic source.
Sorry.
The accusations of one of her father's maids.
And the accusation itself is just brutal. Basically, the maid blames her for the deaths of her 7 husbands. We know that a demon, Asmodeus, is responsible for killing them before the marriages could even be consummated. Can you imagine the emotional and social fallout for Sarah?
It's just a horrific situation to have 7 failed marriages in that culture, regardless of the cause, that would have carried immense social stigma. And then to be directly accused of their deaths. I mean, the maid's words are just brutal. You are the one who kills your husbands. Go, join them. May we never see son or daughter of yours. That curse about having no children in particular would have been a profound blow in a society that placed a high value on family and lineage. How might that have amplified her suffering?
Oh, it would cut right to the core of her identity
Yeah,
and her future. To be childless in that era, often meant social isolation and a sense of failure.
absolutely.
And her initial reaction is heartbreaking. Sadness,
Yeah.
tears, even the thought of suicide. That's how crushing the weight of this despair must have been.
Yeah, it speaks volumes about the intensity of her pain and the weight of those accusations. But then she has this crucial moment of reconsideration. And her reasoning is so telling about her character and the values of her society. It's her concern for her father's reputation that stops her.
Yeah, she's worried about the shame it would bring upon him if she died by suicide. She doesn't want him to be reproached. For people to say, you had only one beloved daughter, but she hanged herself because of her misfortune.
Right.
And she's deeply concerned about the sorrow it would bring him in his old age, potentially even leading to his death.
Right.
That sense of responsibility to her father, even in her darkest moment,
Yeah.
that's remarkable.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the strength of family ties. In a culture where family honor was paramount, how might this have further complicated her personal suffering?
It adds another layer of burden. She's not only dealing with her own pain and the unjust accusations,
Right.
but also with the potential damage to her family's standing. It's like this societal pressure becomes another form of suffering she has to navigate.
Exactly. And it leads her to prayer. Instead of taking her own life, she decides to beg the Lord that I might die and no longer have to listen to such reproaches in my lifetime. So the desire for death is still there, but her actions are directed towards seeking divine intervention.
And her prayer itself, like Tobit's, has a distinct structure.
Yes.
It begins with praise. Blessed are you, merciful God. Blessed be your holy and honorable name forever. Even in her despair, she acknowledges God's goodness. Why do you think this element of praise is present in both their prayers?
It could be a way of reestablishing their relationship with the divine, a reminder of God's fundamental attributes, even when their own circumstances feel chaotic and unjust. It's a way of grounding themselves in something larger than their immediate suffering. And then Sarah lays out her plea. She asks to be taken from the earth to escape these constant reproaches. There's a palpable sense of exhaustion in her words.
And she makes this incredibly powerful declaration of her innocence. You know, Master, that I'm clean of any defilement with a man. I have never sullied my own name or my father's name in the land of my captivity. She's asserting her moral purity in the face of these terrible accusations.
Which underscores the injustice of her situation. Her suffering isn't a consequence of her own actions, but rather the result of external forces and the subsequent blame she endures. She also highlights her unique position as her father's only daughter and heir, emphasizing her vulnerability and lack of alternative paths. And then she reiterates the devastating reality of her 7 dead husbands. 7 husbands of mine have already died. Why then should I live any longer? It's a question that cuts right to the heart of her anguish.
It truly does. And then she adds this conditional aspect to her prayer. But if it does not please you, Lord, to take my life, look favorably upon me and have pity on me, that I may never again listen to such reproaches.
Why?
So even in her desire for death, there's this flicker of hope, a willingness to accept a different outcome if it aligns with the divine will.
That's a crucial observation. It's not a demand.
Right.
It's a plea that acknowledges a higher power, a potential for change beyond her immediate despair.
And then, in this incredible moment of synchronicity, the text tells us, at that very time, the prayer of both of them was heard in the glorious presence of God.
It's almost unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
2 people, different places, experiencing such intense suffering, offering up these deeply personal prayers at the exact same moment. What do you make of this simultaneous timing?
It's certainly striking. It could suggest a shared human experience of suffering that transcends geographical boundaries and individual circumstances. Perhaps there's a universal quality to profound distress that resonates in a larger spiritual context. And the response is equally significant. God sends the angel Raphael to heal both of them. Tobit's blindness is cured, and Sarah is freed from the demon Asmodeus.
And not only that, but Raphael is also sent to facilitate Sarah's marriage to Tobit's son, Tobiah.
Yes.
And the text even mentions that Tobiah had the rightful claim to marry her. This feels like more than just an answer to their prayers. It's a restoration
Right.
and a new beginning. Do we know anything about this rightful claim and its significance? Well, the excerpt doesn't go into detail. But in that cultural context, there were often specific customs and laws regarding marriage within families or extended kin, particularly when it came to inheritance and ensuring the continuation of family lines.
Okay.
So Tobiah likely had a familial connection. That made him the appropriate next husband for Sarah, according to these traditions.
That adds another layer of understanding to the resolution. And the narrative immediately follows up with Tobit returning home and Sarah coming downstairs. It's like the divine intervention sets in motion a swift resolution to their individual crises.
Exactly. The answer to their prayers isn't abstract. It manifests in concrete, tangible ways in their lives.
So as we reflect on this deep dive into the prayers of Tobit and Sarah, several key themes really emerge.
Yes.
We see this raw, unfiltered expression of despair and prayer. These aren't formal theological treatises. They're visceral cries from the heart in moments of extreme anguish.
Precisely. We witness the very specific sources of their suffering for Tobit, these unspecified, undeserved reproaches, and a deep grief possibly tied to his community. For Sarah, the tragic loss of her husbands and the devastating accusations. And yet, even in their longing for death, there's this underlying current of hope, a turning towards the divine for solace and release.
And that synchronicity of their prayers remains a powerful image. Two individuals geographically separated, enduring different forms of torment, yet their pleas are heard simultaneously in this glorious presence of God. It really makes you ponder the interconnectedness of human experience.
It does. Which leads us to a final reflection for you. Consider the sheer power of individual prayers in those moments when we face intense personal crisis. And what might the simultaneous nature of Tobit and Sarah's pleas suggest about the shared landscape of human suffering and the enduring presence of hope, even in its most fragile forms? What does it mean that their deeply personal cries were heard in the glorious presence of God? Is there a comfort in knowing that even in our most isolated struggles, our experiences might resonate within a larger human story, a story that has echoes throughout history and perhaps beyond our individual understanding?
Yeah.
It's a profound idea to contemplate.
It is.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, this has been The Deep Dive.